Mine is mounted.
The Commissioner Co-Padres.
Oh, man, goodness.
I know. Very good.
Yeah,
Drag this out as long as possible. TV, no sports.
Yeah.
It was a minute ago. It's like the rain. That was what I said.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Shut it down. Misty dry up there?
Oh, yeah. Part of our younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, actually so good. That the soil was actually stable.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Could be very rock hard right now.
Do you want open house?
I do.
It's the, do you graduate?
Yes, that was. Yeah.
What was that?
The voice of the house.
It's well, it just, yeah.
The Monday, the month, pretty Monday.
Ran through.
Graduating students got fired. That's what's the volume.
It was right away. Thank you.
Go to the, yeah, that makes sense. Is that what you work with foundation? And following today.
Yes, it is the extreme.
Yeah, it was so nice. They almost usually the students were very.
Were you there? Oh, I went up, I felt bad too.
Was handing the envelopes.
Okay, and did they go when they, until they got them, did they open up and they're like, no?
Sensible, but also like,
Oh,
and then they got their dinner today. Crazy. It was fun. And they gave him a,
Great.
I only say that, I suppose, dinner and thing. The part where I live. Wait, also, we just had a ton of rain.
So Dave, are we set up with Zoom
We are,
for anybody from the outside?
Yeah,
all
It's
the,
also being my screen.
all the thousands of
Yeah.
studio audience members who would like to participate in it or this is. Yeah, someone show up.
I have to say, Paul loves and watches our meetings. Paul. My partner.
Nice.
I saw you.
And you can watch them on YouTube as well, right? So it doesn't show up as,
Yeah.
so you can do that incognito
Yeah,
if you so inclined.
yes. Okay, well, it is 7:31. The,
6:31. 6:32. You said something.
6:31, yes.
Oh,
Planning and Community Development Commission meeting and workshop agenda for June 12th, 2023. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Drysdale,
Present.
Commissioner Evers,
Present.
Commissioner Hambrick,
Present.
Commissioner Cram,
present.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
Commissioner Cawthorn,
Present.
and Commissioner Schwartz.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. And let me go over the goals real quickly. One thing that is a little different tonight is that we have a public hearing. And during public hearings, we take on a very formal process. So commissioners can speak when recognized, but not speak otherwise and not to interrupt each other and so forth. So it's a decision-making process, and we'll conduct a public hearing related to the annexation of the Martin parcel. And the discussion will be focused on annexation, not zoning. Zoning will be in the next meeting. Then we'll do some information sharing in a workshop. We'll hear about and discuss the progress of the rental subcommittee and things that I guess there are some interesting developments, right? Good. And then here's some initial background information about what the PCDC might consider in relation to the Boulder County and Lyons IGA negotiations. And then, of course, we always like to learn about the key community development and planning activities of the town staff. And also respond to possible participation in upcoming events, at least one. Okay, are there any other goals that we would like to cover today? If not, let's proceed with review the minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 27th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the movement seconded. Please make your vote. Okay, so it's approved. Okay. So do we have any audience for audience business? So it doesn't appear to be any on the screen, nobody here, so we'll move on. So I'll open the public hearing related to resolution 2023-03, recommending the annexation of 109 County Road 69. And so Painter would like to do a presentation and bring us up to speed with where we are.
Hey, Chair Drysdale, evening commissioners, I'm going to share my screen. I take everybody had the time to review the packet that came through. And I think from the previous meetings before, everybody's a little sort of up to speed with the Martin parcel. But yes, I'll give a little backstory on the Martin parcel. And the Martins, who the name originated from, own the property, and from the disastrous 2013 flood, pretty much wiped out the entire property. They lost everything. Their house was condemned. In that process, Boulder County bought the property from the Martins. They decided to sell it off. And yeah, that was in 2016. And come 2019, Boulder County granted the property to the town of Lyons. And part of that discussion also involved within our 3-mile planning area, our primary planning area. And with the IGA, that Boulder County knew that this would be a possibility to annex into town one day. And that was kind of the goal set forth going forward when they granted the property. Yeah, as as I mentioned from the flood, the property did become a deed restricted property. So there's entirely no permanent structures are allowed. It's currently zoned as rural residential, and I know we're not doing the rezoning this meeting, but the town's goal is moving towards a parks and open space. We figured that would be the best use the community already uses much of the property as is for social trails. And lots of people already think it's part of town lines. It connects right through the creek and the town's labyrinth that all the kids go to. It's all right in the park first. Yes, there will be no permanent structures. It is in alignment with the comprehensive plan as far as the 3 mile planning, as well as the encouragement for future annexations. That was a very big topic. I know there's a few prior properties around town that we have our eyes on, and some that some citizens would like to look further into, but the Martin parcel is one that has been on the agenda and mind in the town for quite some time. I'm going to switch over to my. Here we go. So in our concept map here, part of the, well, we actually had to skip the referral petition because it is a town-owned property. If it wasn't a town-owned property, we would have done a referral petition through the Board of Trustees to kind of get a pre-recommendation from them to move forward with it and bring it to you guys. But since it is a town-owned property, we did not have to. And part of this was if the property had a 1/6 contiguity and adjacent to the town border, pretty much almost 50, about 36, just a little shy, so definitely not that. As you can see here on the property, we do have the meadow ditch that does go through the northeast through the south portion. The main access of the property will come from County Road 69, and that's where we're gonna plan on leaving that for the time being. And then we have the St. Vrain Creek that goes right through, which all the kids and residents and visitors love to enjoy.
You're in the labyrinth too.
Yep, yeah, the labyrinth is right
That's on
there.
there, that's on this property.
Yeah, it's on this property.
Remember during,
Oh, sure.
just wait till we recognize.
So we think it would be in the best interest for the town to bring this property in, and with future use, as I mentioned before, we want to keep it parks and open space. And we think it would be in the best opinion to have a recommended to the DOT for approval. And I'm open to take any questions.
Okay, just a quick question. So the Martin, I'm just interested in the logistics. The Martin family actually sell to the Boulder County, or did FEMA for emergency buy it from them, and then they gave it to Boulder County? Okay, that's more the, yeah, sorry, I'm being picky, I'm just, yeah, it's usually how it works, yeah.
Thank you for the correction.
Okay, are there any other questions? Are there any of the exhibits that anyone would like to visit and have it explained?
Just a question on, I thought the social trail and is that in that light? The light color there in the
Angular.
park, yeah.
That's great.
I thought there was concerns with the resident just to the south of there about that termination, and has any progress been made, or?
The Darcy's below are worried. Yes, the property owners, Alice Darcy, right here to the south, they're always concerned about people crossing over into their property. So we would like to probably eventually get a barrier up and try to redirect visitors that come through there. The trail doesn't cut directly onto their property, but people guide themselves and explore, and they do cross over. And the Darcys are fully aware that we would like to work on creating a buffer and to avoid having any sort of pedestrian crossover.
So it looks like though from this diagram, there's enough room to reroute that social trail onto County Road 69.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay.
The other question that I had was, there appear to be two lots. And are both lots in the same circumstance relative to flood plain?
Great question, Chair. Yes, so they are, the floodplain, they both are in the same stipulation of that, yes. They do have more along kind of the eastern border, it dies off. But the same regulations apply to both lots.
Commissioner Grant?
Is there any reason to not do this?
That's an excellent question. And with complete transparency, no. The town owns it and it would be in the best interest of the town as well as Boulder County for us to annex it into the town. We have already actually started some fire mitigation on the property itself. But no reason.
Commissioner Scott?
No, I think actually, you said a good question about, last time it was about how much would it cost to maintain that. So I couldn't agree, but it is open space, so I don't know, yeah. That might be, yeah, but I agree with.
As far as maintaining it, it would be as consistent as with, it won't be like Bone Park where it's just wide open grass. This will, from the Dr. Bob plan, there was plans that wanted, have extended social trails, a couple bridges. We probably will not go to that extent. We want to keep the social trails, we keep it graded, and that would be a plan that Parks and Open Space and the planners, myself, and possibly planner David Kimmett would present to the commission down the road. But as far as upkeep goes, it would be nothing drastic, nothing severe, and definitely not in a high price range.
So one of those plans, at one point was to possibly put some stepping stones over to the, labyrinth area. Is that what I understand you just said is there are no plans to do that specifically, but also nothing that would be a barrier to that.
That is correct, Chair. Well, the Dr. Bob plan itself, I remember Commissioner Evers brought it up, it has so much dust on it, why blow off the dust now? We can definitely look back at it in retrospect and try to compare new ideas, look at budgeting. But once we get that plan in effect, we would look about trying to accommodate some of the things before, but not go above and beyond with it. Being an open space property, one thing we don't want to do is just, as far as the habitat goes, you do have the people jumping mouse in there. And with the social trails alone, minimal is better.
So the other discussion that got fairly deep was the old trail that connected the trail that's beside the Botanic Garden with the entrance to Old South St. Vrain Road.
Yes,
You're talking about the east-west trail, or are you talking about the,
right, the one right after the bridge.
yeah, okay, yeah, and it goes,
Well, yeah, well, it went actually from close to the highway. Maybe about.
be the one that was wiped out?
There, about there, yeah.
Right about here,
Okay,
and that is still there. And because that's the one that leads down into the library.
Well, but at one time it connected to the Old St. Vrain Road. Entrance to the Old St. Vrain Road. And you could ride your bicycle along there, down that trail and get on Old St. Vrain Road.
I think I do, yeah,
And
yeah, no, I think, are you saying, yeah, I think I know what you're asking, 'cause I'm thinking the same thing, but are you asking if is there currently a trail on Old St. Vrain?
There's not one now.
But there used to be one, I think that's what you're trying to say, and is that going to be restored in that area? I think that's what you're trying to ask,
So is there any possibility,
yeah.
continuing discussion about restoring that trail?
That is correct, Chair.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think it'd be in the best interest of the town and for the residents and visitors to get the most out of the property with the most minimal done to it, if that makes sense. Adding just a few extra trails in there with a fine grade crushed gravel for bikes.
Yeah, I would add at this time that there's not a plan to continue the trail along the north bank of the river as it was prior to the flood.
Is North Bank,
Yeah,
okay,
this being.
oh, that's the,
north bank.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
because
Yeah,
at
that's
one
right.
time, this trail did continue as Chair Drysdale mentions, like this. And you could ride all the way to County Road 69. Right now, that's not something that's planned. It's become, since the flood, this has been scoured to the point that it would be hardly feasible.
Yeah, there was some discussion about working with CDOT or somebody to because it would be good to have bicycle traffic, you know, off the highway there, you know, if possible. But as I understand it, it is very difficult to track. It would be costly and difficult to put a safe trail in there.
That's correct. Yeah, I did have a conversation with Boulder County just via email about potentially, and there's no traction on it whatsoever. This is just broaching the idea of on the north side of the right of way. You know, we have a crosswalk here right now. So in some format, constructing a access trail on this north side, which is a bit more feasible to County Road 69, then another crosswalk to get back to County Road 69. It's not ideal, but there's just hardly any land left after the flood.
Commissioner
That's fine. So the design of a trail or trails through the Martin parcel, is that part of this discussion or is that a future discussion?
Future discussion, Commissioner.
Okay. I do have ideas, but I'll hold them.
Okay, are there any other discussions? Any desire to go into any of the exhibits?
I would just say, good job putting it all together. It's very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
My former coworker is now the director of public works at Boulder County, in case you want. She used to define trails and roadways. So I bet you might even talk to her. That's what you're talking to. So,
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, entertain a motion.
I'll do it. I'll move that the PCDC approve the annexation of 109 County Road 69. Finding that the application complies with the standards contained in Lyons Municipal Code, such and such regarding the annexation for 109 County Road 69. I'm not reading. That's cruel, guys.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Seconded by Commissioner Cram. Okay, so is there additional discussion or comments going into it? If not, we'll take a vote. Everybody,
You're right.
you're right. And pressing it to the right is a yes, and to the left is
I think it's not working.
Oh, I think you boxed us out.
Yeah, there's gonna be a grand reveal.
because
Oh.
you wait until everybody is
Oh.
voted. And then you reveal. Okay, so it passes unanimously.
He wields his sword definitely.
Okay, so we'll bring the hearing to a close and move on to the workshop. And at this time, then, Commissioner Cram and Vice Chair Evers can talk about what you've been up to.
Yeah, so we had a very helpful meeting, a good couple weeks ago now with, Dave was there as well, of course, and Alex was there, and we met with the Housing and Human Services and Economic Vitality Commissions, and there's Kim Mitchell was there too to be the staff liaison for the EDC. The staff liaison was not available for the Housing and Human Services. And also we had invited the code enforcement officer, Zach Burgess, I think that's how you say his name. He was not available, but we met with EDC, HHS and us. And we shared with them kind of the rundown of where we are at. So as a reminder, the original proposal was for us to focus on short-term rentals and looking at the code adjustments for them under the umbrella of affordable housing and how can we make this all work. And then the last meeting, we came to you all and said, hey, can we expand this to consider long-term rentals as well? The answer was yes. So we explained all this to this group of people, and we really just got their input on, what are some things we should be thinking about. Long story short, they all expressed support to continue. The general view was that more housing is better, whether it's short-term or longer-term housing. So Paul from the EDC was especially clear about that. He's like, yes, we need more housing, period, no matter what it looks like. The next step that we came up with was to do some kind of open house with the public, or basically further exploration. And we haven't sussed that out yet. I don't have anything concrete to bring to you to get your input on. But that's our next discussion, is how to get more input from homeowners, from people who are renting. To kind of inform what we're going to do next. And I would anticipate there would be some consideration eventually, sort of a pros and cons of developing code for long-term rentals or not. Yeah.
No, to say the city, I saw in the news last week that the city of Denver now has a licensing program for rentals too. I don't know if you know.
It has for 2 years and they
But
just,
yeah, I was gonna say, new, it's relatively new.
yeah, there was a grace period that I think is ending, or it had just ended in January.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they were talking about, that some
Yeah.
people still haven't complied. Okay, so yeah.
And then Fort Collins is in their second reading with their
Yes.
city council for a long-term licensing program.
So they're doing, okay.
Yeah, so it's a foregone conclusion, I think. And then Longmont has had discussions, but there's no formal motions or studies.
Okay, so everyone's picking up and trying to do something.
It seems like it,
Mhm.
I did a little bit of research looking at towns around us and maybe similar sizes and places, and it's not across the board a thing that everyone's doing by any means. So I think for us, we have to look at, the safety aspect of it. If it makes our housing safe, if that's important enough to implement something that might be unpopular, that would kind of be the thing we would want to wrestle with. And it's good data. We would just have a much better understanding of what our actual housing stock is and who it's available for, who it's not available for, which is really interesting probably for all of us to know.
I'm gonna guess, I think the city of Denver, I think it applies only to rental complexes. It doesn't even apply to individual, like a
No.
condo owner, or do you know?
They have different costs of tiers. So
Okay.
yeah, there's a cost for single family rentals, within the one house. And then when there's attached units, the cost structures change based on how
Okay.
many units are attached to each other.
Okay, so they did try and do more.
But it's single family all the way up to I think 15 units, and then it gets into a commercial different license.
So yeah, so it's not like they're trying to target commercial. Okay. got it.
No, it's kind of a similar
Okay.
single family residential
Okay.
rental units.
Yeah, so I guess I would say something that surprised me a little bit in the meeting was I anticipated kind of more animosity towards short-term rentals, and I didn't really hear that at all, but more that kind of broad support for different forms of housing. And we did talk with them about, what our relationship will look like moving forward. So we kind of talked about Dave, Neil and I sort of doing more of the work and then just sharing things with them as drafts, and they were supportive of that. So, yeah.
It's good to hear Paul said short-term rentals are good, because I've struggled with, will short-term cannibalize long-term?
Yeah.
And I don't know I've gone back and forth on that. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, short terms are gonna be short term, and they're an big economic boom for the city, so for the town. So, so I'm still trying to find some information that says one cannibalize the other. And
It can, yeah.
and we've seen that in the mountain towns.
Yeah.
Is that really lines? I don't know. That's where I've wrestled.
Well, I think part of what's underlying all of this, and we're not moving too quickly on it, is we have this housing study that's underway. So I think a lot of the we don't knows will maybe be informed, or that'd be great if they solved it for us and told us exactly what we should expect. But I think that might help with specifically that one. I share that. Paul did say, he said, short-term rentals for driving tourism and business, and then long-term rentals for workforce housing. And we kind of put it on him, which one would you say is the bigger need? And he said that there's such both big needs with such great potential for growth that you can't really compare. So they're in his mind, they're equal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
workforce housing is just as much of a problem as needing people to be here in town to buy goods and services in town.
Yeah.
From
I
his
did
perspective.
feel that he, I got a slightly different feeling.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Good.
from it. I had the sense that Paul was more hopeful for more short-term rentals.
Really?
Um, not that he,
I'm
not
with
that
you
he
on the
didn't
short-
like long-term rentals, but just that his sentiment was for immediate business needs, it would bring people here who spend money, because he talked about that, you know, people come here and what are they going to do? They're staying in somebody's house, and so they're going to go buy things from here. And I think that's a rationale as to why we have short-term rentals, is just for that reason. But it doesn't represent what I see as the sustainable longevity of Lions, because most of our short-term rentals are for a short window of the calendar year, and the rest of the year, then you're left with a gap, and that gap is yawning. We need more people to actually live here and spend money all year, as opposed to for 4 really quick months of summer, or 3 really quick months of summer, where it's like this burst of financial windfall, and then it's a drought. And that's the toughest part for Lions in every way, is that we don't have a sustainable economy. So everything every idea that I've heard just in my short, now almost 1 year, I'm almost there, guys, almost 1 year in, it'll be next week.
Congratulations.
I survived somehow. So, no, it's great. You know, I hear many ideas that are great for, like, oh yeah, that would be really fun. And long-term rentals aren't fun, and but they're harder, they're kind of a harder problem to solve. Long-term rentals, long-term businesses, anything that takes some strategic planning, and that's like, I worry about that, is that, you know, it's really great to have our influx of tourists and our influx of festival people, but it doesn't solve our bigger problems.
Kay from the head of Housing and Human Services did talk about how we're getting, I think she said, was it 40 affordable rentals?
Oh, at Summit.
Yeah, at
Yep.
Summit,
Mhm.
you know, and so she expressed curiosity as to how that will influence everything. And that's a good point. And another interesting point, I think the short-term rentals are gonna ebb and flow. Like, I saw some conversation a week or 2 ago on Lions Happenings about somebody expressing concern. They're like, usually my short-term
Yeah,
rental
so
is totally booked by this time, and I've had very little traffic. What's going on? And so, yeah, so there's gonna be trends that change over time. But-
I forgot what, I already forgot, but it'll come back. Sorry, I was trying to listen.
Actually, I have I guess, question / comment about consideration of alignment of incentives. There if there were incentives that could be aligned to each of them to get the result we want.
Yes.
And that may be a little, I mean, I don't have anything on the top of my mind, but if somebody could think that through, that might help.
There are incentives in the affordable housing sphere of long-term rentals, at least, that, and this could stem from a licensing process, like a long-term licensing process that we were just talking about. You know, the fees from that go toward some sort of town-managed affordable housing process that would contribute to maybe construction of some sort of ADU or tiny home village, or I don't know. I mean, there's different ways that a pool of money like that could be used that other communities have taken hold of in all sorts of fee structures for housing. I mean, and that goes into, then you're veering into other forms of I've seen a windfall tax on sales of houses that are over $1 million. And jurisdictions use this windfall tax for affordable housing purposes. So that's a whole nother ball of wax to contemplate, but there's different methods by which monies could be escrowed and used for affordable housing, land banking, whatever. But
And we have a, go ahead. please.
Well, I sure want to, still want to listen to what you're gonna say, but, I just remember, you know, our housing study or Laramie County is directly adjacent to us, and I do know, like, I knew somebody who had a short-term rental up Blue Mountain, which is not the town of Lyons, but it's considered a Lyons area. And then Laramie County, only in the last couple of years, they stopped allowing short-term rentals, so now they've made it, well, they had a long-term rental, actually, the daughter moved in now, and they just use it, but, I mean, that's still, I mean, it's not within the town, but it's still affecting, she had it rented it like every night. I mean, they're as a short-term rental, and I guess where I'm going with, I guess you're saying Paul is really, he's like, he said you need a lot of both. Yeah, and then I guess, Laramie County told them, like, she had to stop operating it as a short-term rental, and now it's a long-term rental. So, well, I don't know. I just, it's this all part of the housing study or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember is we're talking about them like they're mutually exclusive, but they're not.
Yeah.
So like, I think long-term rentals are always an available option
Yeah.
for anyone. And then short-term rentals are sort of this, shinier object that's maybe a little distracting, or maybe it's just more fun because you can make more gains more quickly potentially, right? So it's sort of like this, anyway, you get it. But they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So like, we're not going to propose anything that would exclude anyone from long-term renting their structure unless we come up with a long-term rental licensing program that requires something to be safer than it currently is. Then they may not be able to rent it out if it's not safe. But then you're getting into a different realm. So, but I just think it's important to remember that they're not mutually exclusive when we talk about it.
So I think part of the housing study would be like, say, so you've got a permit to rent, maybe, I suppose the housing study would come up with this, but say you get a permit to have short-term rentals on your property, say for 5 years. And you could maybe, I don't know how, and it could be like, so many days per year, or maybe even, is that all?
I don't know. I think from my understanding from other cities who have done housing.
Okay,
assessments
yeah, okay,
funded by
okay.
this DOLA money is just really assessing what, how many units you have across the different area median income, and, how much is at certain levels or not.
Yeah, okay.
As an indicator of who can afford to live in certain areas. And I just think this whole short-term, long-term, in some ways, they solve different problems.
Yeah.
And that's what's helping me kind of frame my thinking around them. But I think as long as both of them, I've heard some people say that their short-term or their long-term helps them afford to stay here. And that's, I think, like the double dip of, if it's a long-term, it's helping two people or two homes, a household be part of here. And it helps just the diversity of the socioeconomic status of our town and all of those things. So maybe that's a helpful way to frame how we're thinking about it. If somebody can't afford to stay here unless they have a short-term rental, then let's figure out how they can have a short-term rental.
Yeah, that's, brings up the concept of use cases. And, identifying 4 or 5 likely use cases. Use cases are used a lot in project management. But essentially what it means is, think of what the situation is. One of them is somebody's in a house and they would like to have some help with their mortgage. What are the good solutions for that? Other people, maybe they're gone part of the year and would like to rent out their house while they're gone. What would be a good situation for that? What are good situations for somebody who wants to move into Lyons and really needs, rent that's under $1,500 or something, So maybe a list of use cases, not to create more work for the subcommittee, but just to consider that as one way of starting to, to get what could be the range of possibilities and what incentives or disincentives would help make the most use cases work well, both for the town and for the people who are involved.
Yeah. So. Yeah, any other questions right now?
I don't have a question, but it sounds like most of this discussion is based off of existing safe habitable spaces. I know at one point, I think I had just started with the commission, we were talking about incentives to help people become compliant so that we could offer more of one or the other. Is that a narrative that's being discussed now, or is that
How to help
something?
people be compliant?
Not how to help, but how to incentivize the short versus long term, so maybe, you know, based on what we're learning, it wouldn't be fair, it sounds like, to say like, oh, if you're offering long-term housing, there's more incentive for you, because it sounds like the discussion now is there's some benefit to either or. So how are we maybe looking at compliance as an incentive for more to come to the market on either front, I guess?
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Megan.
go ahead.
Well, David has some great ideas that he's been like really patient with, because Megan and I, especially Megan's been building this, subcommittee and trying to pull people in and David has been sitting on, I guess, ideas that have rooted from the staff side that are really much in the weeds of what is the unit mix we might allow, the number of STRs in town, for instance.
Yeah.
Or what is the percentage of our housing stock that we want to set aside for STRs versus long-term rentals? And I think when we understand kind of where we think that target is, then we can start, having a blend of one versus the other. And there's different ways of doing it. Some of them are like street frontage, like no more than, 50 feet of street front can have one STR, or some could be a radius around one STR, and there can't be so many more outside that radius, or it could just be a total number in the town. All those are precedents that other towns have used, and David suggested that we can look at.
And that's, the housing survey will probably help with that.
Well, yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
we could do it on our own. I think we're a little cautious because we're kind of aware that there's these experts that are gonna be coming in to help us, and we don't know if that's something they're gonna help us with, but they could. So there's a meeting coming up, next week or 2 weeks with you? So that might be the right time to start planning to see with them about our need for wanting more information around what's the right mix for Lions. So I think it's coming, but we haven't kind of avoided answering those questions yet.
Yeah, we're kind of in these parallel processes, right? We've got the housing study going on, and then we've got our kind of more organic, people-oriented conversations, and I think they'll be coming together.
I think generally though, we think long-term rentals are a better idea for Lions than short-term rentals if you compared one for one, right? But the answer is probably a blend, a percentage. There's a right number of STRs and the rest are long-terms, and that's kind of what we're approaching it.
And that's only, again, within the rental sphere of things, nothing
Right.
to do with actual home ownership, which is a whole nother animal to tackle. And that's like,
Yeah, good luck acting.
I know, but I mean, but they do go hand in hand though, in part, because if we, one thought is if we can densify Lions and change around our minimum lot sizes from 7,000 square feet in R1 to something that's more realistic that other communities use, like 3,500 square feet for an R1, you open up the opportunity for both a new home to be owned and a potential rental. And so you can make headway. There's ways to lower costs on a lot of fronts in.
LA is, I read something about LA, is that what they did? I saw something.
That was
article.
exactly what,
Yeah.
what we were
Yeah.
talking about 2 weeks ago, or 2.5, whatever it was last time we met. Los Angeles has actually had a statistically significant decrease in housing costs that they were able to directly correlate to ADU building. So it's interesting. There's a lot of avenues. And so anyway, we could talk about this ad nauseum, which would get us nowhere. So
So if and when we do a public meeting, how much lead time is needed and what is involved to set that up?
so a public meeting, you would just need to probably cancel that idea because it's bad. No, I would say, erase that from the record. I would say that
Make people come, no, tell
yeah,
them,
if you gave me like 2 weeks' notice, that's probably the minimum
Uh-huh.
amount of time, 2 weeks' notice, so that I could get things prepared for that. It would be better to have more time than that. I would also say that
Maybe at least to give the public at least,
at least a week.
yeah, well,
yeah.
more than, well, I would.
Well, I was gonna say, when we went through the comp plan, I mean, you have public notices that go with the mailers for your bill, utility
Yeah.
bill. So I would say engage Kim, in probably a month lead time.
Yeah, to say, that's
That
actually
would be
more,
better.
that's what we would do, actually, we would.
So they can hit the billing cycle and just get people to put it on their calendar.
We would set at least a month's notice
Some
that.
social media.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
would-
the immediate next step, I would like to suggest the three of us get together and talk about how to get public input.
If we get our housing consultants to do it for us, that'd be
That'd be
really good.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
You could, yeah, piggyback the
that'd be
objective.
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
because you can't have meeting overdose and then we'll lose,
Yeah.
or we'll dilute the amount of input we could potentially get.
If it doesn't align with their scope, they're not gonna wanna do it, obviously.
Yeah.
Can I, and I'm sorry, but what's the goal of that meeting? Like, what are you trying to take away from that?
From talking with people like homeowners and
Yeah,
renters and then, the goal would be to hear like what's working well for them with rentals, where are they struggling? Yeah,
Okay, sorry,
I think what would they think about potential regulations? What are their concerns? Is there any way we could help them?
Yeah.
So such a meeting, I think, would need a fairly engaging presentation to get people's
Mhm.
thoughts
Yeah.
working in. And then a way of capturing their perspectives, whether it's yellow stickies or people taking open notes or.
is
Yeah.
there a way for us to do a workshop that's like more marketed and open to the public as a part of our meeting, the meeting before, so that we're over that presentation side of things, and then we're open housing later on?
Well, the comprehensive plan, I mean, definitely had open houses, the whole point was kind of. I mean,
This is like a whole area of
Yeah.
expertise, community engagement.
yeah, it is.
But I do know that like for something especially this hot, it's like you kind of want somebody who's skilled to be able to sort of break down some preconceived notions that folks will come angry with. And
Yeah,
not break them
that's-
down, but maybe expand them a bit so they're open to other ideas. And that's
Right.
like a beautiful orchestrated art.
Yeah, it is, yeah, it is,
that I
exactly.
would personally,
If the consultant would do that.
but if the consultant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the consultant, it was the consultant, that's why part of the reason you hired the consultant. I don't know if that's the public
Do you
engagement is
feel like
part of.
that's feasible?
Yeah,
Or
Oh, yeah.
worth an ask? Can you
Yeah.
do
To
that?
piggyback off of there or pilfer their knowledge, whatever. Yeah.
But can I
think-
ask them to facilitate
Yeah.
a public
meeting, yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think that's,
I
I
don't see
think
how
that
it's
would be
not.
within scope.
Yeah, I don't see how it's not part of their meeting. It's just, can we get them to ask the questions we want answers to? So-
Yeah, and it could even be it could be a portion of their meeting.
Right.
Where they defer to us for a short period of time, or for a station. We have a station in a meeting. How meetings often work, you're like here and you do a little bit of interactive work and over there's a
Actually, if there's,
tripod.
well,
with
there's-
information. Oh, like here's the STR subcommittee or.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, community.
Yeah.
it's even more like, I worked on one of the most controversial transportation projects in the state, the new highway that they wanted. People scream, so, actually, the consultant they used was actually, it actually happens to be based in Boulder too. CDR, specializes in conflict resolution and public engagement that we're bringing out, and they would lead the entire, they would lead the meeting and about how to, talk about, yes, community engagement and how to, that art of, managing a meeting. And I'm not saying this has to be really controversial, I'm just saying, dealing with different voices, but maybe, yeah, okay. And then I brought up the consultant board because we have someone very experienced locally who does it as well, but they don't. Yeah, yeah, we get there, but I'm just saying, that they're out there and they're also happen to be local.
So,
Yeah.
do you feel we have sufficient guidance? It's ambiguous and specific enough.
Yes, I think I'm good. Neil, Dave?
Yeah,
Okay, just a real
let's-
quick summary to make sure, we're at least reasonable, similar agreement. That we do want to align with the consultant who's doing the study, and that may well include a public, meeting. Probably a little early in the process. So we get as much input as possible, work together and so town staff could help with putting together presentation material if needed and it does sound like there's interest on both STR and long-term, which includes both ADU and full rentals. Is that a fair summary?
Sounds like a good summary.
Yes.
Okay, so anything else on that topic?
I would say one additional thing.
Okay.
Chair. So, I do think that like a final report, this, board report of 5,000 pages that will be dropped on your desk, will, probably, I would guess it probably won't happen until late this year. By the time we actually get through meetings and being able to understand this ourselves, what do you guys think? It'll
From
be-
us and or from the housing study you're talking about? Oh, from us.
Yeah. Like, I don't think this is something that we need to expedite, and I think it would be fine if it took that much time. That's just my opinion.
So would that then be sort of aimed, so we would be able to have, if there's any code language and so forth in time for next summer's season, if you will?
Yeah, or even early in 2024, maybe not
Yeah.
even a year away from now, but like, yeah. It still could be the same commission even, but which would be nice because you guys would have all that knowledge.
Some continuity.
Yeah. But I also don't feel like this needs to be rushed because it'll be a big change and an important one. Now, that said, I have thought about a couple of things that we've talked about our subcommittee, and I think I broached it with everyone here, which are possible changes to our current Lyons Municipal Code that could happen prior to that time, just because there's some interesting dynamics in our code that might need to be resolved, like maximum number of STRs.
Mhm.
Maybe we want to address that before we get any, maybe we don't, but
Yeah,
know,
that might
that's
be like
something-
low hanging fruit was the term you
yeah.
had said before.
Yeah, if there are any codified changes that we feel need to happen and actions that the PCDC feels needs to happen, we don't have to wait for another year for those to be implemented. Yeah.
Okay, so any other comments or questions on that topic? If not, we can move on to some discussion about the Boulder County IGA, particularly as it relates to land use.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Chair. As you know, I sent out an email to everyone today that I inadvertently had created a staff report that contains some information that I should have included. And I didn't realize it, but in hindsight, now I do. And so that stems from some negotiations in the current Town of Lyons, Boulder County intergovernmental agreement dialogue that we're having. So that said, there are things to talk about tonight, nonetheless, outside of the staff report and information that we still can share. So I'm going to put up those maps. First of all, has anyone had the chance? I know there was so much for the Martin parcel annexation to review, but did anyone have a chance to take a look at the 5.2A, the 2012 comprehensive land use agreement? That's our current ranking agreement. If you didn't have a chance prior to this meeting, I encourage you to try to take a look at that document, because that's That's our basis bearing. That's where we go.
Can you tell me again? what that-
Yeah, it was in your packet. It was labeled 5.2A.
Yeah, there it is, yeah.
2012 Comprehensive Development Plan IGA. And that's the land use agreement that we have now. And it's the one that is expiring. And so
Yeah, so this is the actual IGA that.
this is the actual IGA.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to read it tonight. But
Yeah,
if, do read it. It's not that long, actually.
yeah, it's,
And, but there's items in here that I have seen, and I'm going to take my big fat red line marker across a couple of them, because there's things in here that have changed. Just because it's been 11 years. So if you see anything that you'd like to have changed, Mayor Rogan has suggested an approach for the PCDC, which is to draft a letter of anything you'd like implemented into the IGA, draft a letter as a commission. And then that would be brought to the Board of Trustees. So that's dialogue that, I don't know if a subcommittee is needed or how a letter to be drafted would be brought about, but that was her recommendation. Anyway, take a look at that because it's important and it will be there. It would be how we decide the 2023 edition of this IGA. The next document, the one I'll put on the screen, are these maps. So let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, so these maps, this series of maps shows a few things of importance, and I think everyone has seen these, but just to refresh your memories on them, this is our 3-mile boundary. The town of Lyons is here. These blue polygons represent potential areas of addition to our municipal influence areas, potentially. That's not necessarily going to be the case. I created a map that took those polygons and put them on our 2023 comp plan. So that's the second map that you've seen. So
the red is the planning area,
that's right.
okay.
So this
Yeah.
red boundary is our planning area from 2012.
2012, yeah,
And
okay.
it continued into our 2023
Yeah.
comp plan. It's still our planning area in the 2023.
It
comp
did
plan.
change. That really-
These blue polygons mostly are within it, but not entirely. And there's arguments that you could have for adding in areas both inside our planning area and outside our planning area. So one thought that I have brought up, and it's something that I brought this up to Boulder County. I don't know if I've mentioned it to the PCDC, but one thought is that we could have a 2-tiered approach to municipal influence areas. Does everyone recall the difference between municipal influence area and rural preservation area? Because that's important. That's the main crux of the IGA. Just to reiterate, municipal influence areas are those areas that we could potentially annex. Not that we would annex, because first of all, we don't have the power to just annex unless it's town-owned or it's an enclave. It has to go to a vote of the people if it's over 5 acres. All right, so if it's under 5 acres, we could do that, but it still has to be a landowner commenced process. A landowner would come to us and ask for annexation. We don't go to a landowner and say, we're going to force an annexation of your parcel unless it's an enclave. So municipal influence areas we could potentially annex. As mentioned, we have a couple of area landowners that have asked us about annexation, the Boone family in this area and the Connor family in this area. Both of those parcels are right now under the 2012 IGA considered rural preservation, meaning we can't annex them under our current IGA. Another potential annexation, the Lucanen family has come to, talk to the town about potentially annexing. And that, is also, they're right here, kind of on the southwest intersection of US 60, US 36 and Highway 66. They're also under rural preservation area. So we could not annex under our current 2012 agreement. So what this letter that the PCDC would generate would be talking about what is the will of the PCDC on some of these potential known annexations, other areas. So, getting back to this tiered approach, a tier 1 approach would be possible, would be areas that we could potentially annex. A tier 2 would be, we're not interested in annexing them, but we want more influence over them. So that would be something maybe say like this is Hall Ranch. Here. This area of Hall Ranch, which is owned by Boulder County and immediately adjacent to the town of Lyons to Corona Hill. We have a lot of interest in that for a host of reasons. There's people who want to have that as a trail access. There's people who don't want weed spraying to happen there. There's reasons why we should have a bigger say at the table of how this land is used by Boulder County, because it is right there. And as a rural preservation parcel, we don't have quite as great of a say. So that's where the thought came to my mind of why don't we have 2 tiers of municipal influence area? One, yes, we may potentially be interested in annexing over the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Another, no, we're not interested in annexing. We just want to have more influence in policy so that we are not left in the dust by things that happen. And that also includes Cemex over to the east of town. So that's one map. And again, this map, this is our 2012 IGA with those blue polygon areas that I came up with. This is just my idea of, oh, these seem interesting to me from a planning lens for either potential annexation possibilities or just for wise land use. And who's to say if I'm right? So areas in green, rural preservation areas. Areas in yellow, under the 2012 IGA, those are areas where we could potentially annex now. And as a group, the planning commission has planning purview, and it would be great to, craft a will of the PCDC to the BOT. Going forward.
Real quick.
Yeah.
The Boone has come to us, right? They came to us, right? And so Lucanen and the Connor parcel.
Yeah, so this is the
They
Boone parcel here. So the Boone family has inquired about potentially
Okay,
annexing.
yeah,
Now, their property is also for sale.
okay.
So they, who knows what the next owner might want? The next owner might buy this and be like, this is my 60 acres of paradise right next to town. I could walk into town and scrape the house that's there. That's like, this mid-60s bi-level house and build a 10,000 square foot, whatever, hunting range. It's in Boulder County. So they have things that they can do. This parcel is the Connor parcel. The Connor family, it's in the Connor family estate, and Lee, the last name's not Connor. Her name's escaped me. Anyway, she's the daughter of Jonathan Connor, who passed away last year, who has a single house on this piece of
Yeah,
land
someone behind Horizon Drive.
behind, up above
Yeah.
Horizon
okay.
Drive.
It's like there are like 2 right there. Okay, yeah.
And she has come to me several times asking about annexation. She's interested in annexing and she's interested in affordable housing. Potentially on the property, and that would even include raising the house that's there. To that point, she's interested in that. So, that's those 2. These other parcels in this area are a part of maybe making this a bit more usable of space, including emergency access purposes. We've talked about the need for potentially annexing for water redundancy, because we have water pressure issues on some of these areas. We also have wildland urban interface issues with, you know, the potential for wildfires, even in the spring season where we're not going to see a fire because you couldn't even light a cigarette lighter outside right now. This area, you know, has limited ability for residents to escape or emergency access vehicles to enter because there's one way in, one way out roads. And so there's other rationale for this area. You move to this polygon, this again is Hull Ranch. This one here along it's not Nolan Drive, it's Stone Canyon Road. At one time it was called Nolan Drive. You know, my thought here was it's close to the Stone Canyon neighborhood, and which makes it, you know, more compact than contemplating development farther out east. Because you have a lighted intersection here, you already have relatively dense development here. So why not here? It's flat along the portions that are immediately adjacent to Stone Canyon. It's not in a floodplain like so much of Lyons. And so that was the thought. However, it's outside of our primary planning area. Which we can still advocate for that, but it does go outside of our primary planning area. Some people liked that idea when I brought it up. Some people did not like that idea when I brought it up. You know, there's reasons for and against all of these. This polygon here is kind of a gap. This is unincorporated Boulder County between the historic heart of Lyons and Stone Canyon, and, you know, the intersection of Highway 36, Stone Canyon, and McConnell. This polygon here is adjacent to Highland Drive. A lot of this is hilly, but this portion immediately along Highland Drive, maybe 20 years from now, we would want to be, or 10 years from now, we would want to have residential continue along Highland Drive. I don't know. And then you get into the whole Cemex area. So, yeah.
So I should know this answer, but what's the difference in the primary planning area and the 3 mile plan?
It's a great question. So the primary planning area was, I don't know when it was created, but it existed back in 2012 for this IGA.
Okay.
I don't know if it existed how long before that, but essentially it's this agreed upon zone where we would, not with teeth, limit our development, but we would say outside of this area, we're not planning for development. And that became incorporated into the 2012 intergovernmental agreement. And again, it's remained into our 2023 comprehensive plan. So that's the primary planning area. The 3 mile planning area, which, let me just go back up to that slide. That's our state mandated, you know, area of influence that every municipality has. From the boundaries of your jurisdiction out 3 miles, you have the right to plan for the future. You know, I've mentioned this before, Boulder County is a one-off in the whole state. We have the unusual format of a comprehensive land use intergovernmental agreement between all of the jurisdictions and the county, whereby the county actually wields more power over land use than do the pertinent municipalities.
So is it safe to say, I mean, the LPPA has to be inside the 3 mile plan?
It's inside the 3 mile.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you could not take that beyond that. 3 miles.
and that's negotiated within the IGA where, as you said, the 3 miles a state statute driven. So I mean, there's some overlap there, but there's.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that we have limited ourselves with the Lyons planning area more than most jurisdictions in the state would have. And that goes for all the jurisdictions within Boulder County, because
Oh, okay.
all the jurisdictions have a planning area of sorts, as opposed to their normal 3 miles. like you would have in-
That's always such a strong idea. For the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wondered.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's how it's
That's how
different
they've done
than
it.
Laramie County or Weld County or whatever.
So is it?
Oh, go ahead, Chair.
I was just gonna say this seems to, work in the direction of desiring more simplicity. So we don't have 15 different maps with different simplicity and, less restriction. More flexibility for the town. So to me, those are two things that kind of jump out from your presentation. So we would want to be able to do as much as we want to do in our area, but not make it so complicated that there are like 15 different ways of looking at the map.
Yeah, I think I get the drift of what you're saying, Chair Drysdale. So, and this is, I've had a similar thought to what you're saying, Lisa, if I'm understanding you correctly. When you look at this map and you see the green areas, we are restricted. Even though it's in our planning area, we're restricted from development within our planning area. So we further restricted ourselves beyond just what our planning area does already.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, now is our time to change around those restrictions if we so desire. Now, some of these we don't want, and it's actually kind of nice. Like, we have zero desire to build on the L hill above Lyons High School. And so you say, okay, we'll keep that rural preservation area. We're not going to build anything there. And then you could make the case for other areas. It's like, yeah, we'll keep that green. We'll keep Hall Ranch, this green color. We're not planning on building anything there. That's, what I call the tier 2, maybe what we want in the 2-tiered approach. So, yeah, it's the time to, shed off anything that we don't like and hopefully bring to the table with Boulder County what we do want. And we're 2 meetings in. We had our first meeting a month ago. We had our second meeting last Monday, June 5th. Our next meeting will probably happen in early July. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but it will be in early July. So the earlier that the PCDC can create this letter to the Board of Trustees, the sooner that will get to Boulder County.
Commissioner Evers
Oh, yeah,
and
Commissioner.
then Commissioner Kramer.
So I did not read the agreement from 2012, so maybe it's in there, but I don't see, other than just the implied the meaning in the name of Lyons Municipal Influence Area versus Rural Preservation Area. I don't see them defined, and I don't really see any sort of restrictions on how one's treated differently than the other. Is that in this agreement?
There are definitions for rural preservation and municipal influence
Okay,
area.
I think they're easy to understand, but
Yeah,
so with that in mind, there are areas of our planning area that are, residential areas that seems odd to rurally preserve them, other than maybe I just don't understand. Does that seem appropriate to you as a planner, that we would have residential areas that are platted into sort of like cul-de-sac-ish, geographically allowing cul-de-sac type areas that are now for rural preservation? Sort of a pointed question, but does it make sense?
yeah. Are you talking about specifically here?
Yeah, the
Worth way, yeah.
south St. Vrain.
Well, just if we're, and also Apple Valley, like there's huge properties up there that, it's at so far from town that they're rurally preserved, and maybe there's things about that area of town that don't matter, but I'm just trying to think, like, I get the side of the hill. Actually, the Lyons L isn't part of rural preservation, it's in city limits, but the Prairie Dog Village next to it is part of the rural preservation that has a trail through it, right?
Yes.
So like, I guess I'm just curious, why are those communities rural preservation and not municipal influence? That seems to be the one thing that irks me as a commissioner about understanding this map.
That's to limit us from potentially annexing them. That's the rural preservation. So
The county doesn't want
preserving the rural nature of the development that exists. So
That does
they,
seem against our goals in the comp plan is to provide density and housing options in the town of Lyon, right?
Well, does the county not, okay.
The county has really, really strict rules on developing agricultural land.
Yeah,
And there's also a presumptive size max, so like you can't. Well, without getting into it, you can't really do much other than just repeat
Yeah.
what's already there.
I'm just
The way they set
thinking,
it up.
there's things that, I mean, okay,
It does say in here, like the
Yeah.
community buffer is part of the agreement, and it does say that. They would never allow more intensive zoning classifications for lands like that unless we agreed upon it. But I almost feel like that's kind of like to ease us into not being scared of them, like allowing more density, but I'd almost think that we would want to encourage it if it makes sense. Anyway, I'm asking too many questions. and I'm letting you answer.
and it's good questions, like, I questioned, just as a matter of potential negotiation, are we ever going to annex this far north on Apple Valley Road? Like, because in theory, anything in yellow could be annexed. And, we couldn't hopscotch annex this. It would have to be a progression of annexation up this far north. And, part of me thinks, well, if we trade off one area of municipal influence, maybe we can, have a transfer of development rights sort of scenario and move that yellow area to somewhere where we really would like to see development. But,
Or let me,
at the same time, why lose any of this?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
and then also just to ask the same question a different way, like, I think we would want. And maybe this is out of the scope of what we're talking about with the IGA, but wouldn't we want to encourage the county to perhaps make existing residential communities more dense on the skirt of our town so that we have more support for our town services?
That would be.
So like, if
great.
we painted the rest of Apple Valley yellow and we painted Courts Way yellow, would we have grounds to say, hey, county, we want you to consider providing more dense zoning for those areas than what currently exists because we need the support in our communities?
It's a good thought, and, one problem with most of the zoning around lines is that it's rural residential. And rural residential, has a pretty low density threshold. Boulder County as a whole doesn't really encourage anywhere high density.
I know, but they're going to have to like come to that conversation and it's happening soon.
Oh,
I teach Dale to you and like,
Yeah.
like
Have
they're
you
not.
had that conversation?
Yes, and there will be ADUs like soon,
Okay.
but what that means soon for the county, I don't know.
Oh,
10
man,
years.
because I approached ADUs with Boulder County CP&P staff.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah, like I
like-
relentlessly tease them. I'm like, you guys stop talking about anything else until you talk about affordable
Yeah.
housing. But if we were to tell them we want these to be yellow because we want to influence
Yeah.
density and we want to influence what you think of as zoning within the areas that we are influencing or influence us, then I think that's what I think is our biggest take here, other than maybe some open space access and some possible developments and CMAX and looking in and all that. That's all great. But I do think we're missing if we don't paint everything yellow. And then I'm like, why don't we just do what Word does and just call the whole 3 mile plan and municipal influence area? But
you would upset someone.
you don't be strategic like that, right? Because then you're just
Yeah.
sort of being annoying. But I do think we should try to paint as much of this yellow where there's existing platted properties as possible. But I don't know if that makes sense. I look to the planners to make sure that makes sense.
Well, makes,
That tends in the direction of simplifying things.
Yeah, good point.
Yes.
Yeah, and because then you're not like right next to each other or things like this and things like that. And I also think it improves the town's flexibility and options. Even if it's pretty far out, any actions would be much later in time.
I mean, changing all of those communities to R2, which doesn't exist in county, but like, if that were to happen today, I think we'd see a lot of change very quickly, because all those properties become much more valuable.
Oh my
And
gosh.
people would put them on the market, and people would
Yeah.
buy them and scrape them and build 2 dwelling units.
Yeah.
And we would see a big change. Now, whether that's like a 10-year timeline horizon of a noticeable change in our own community, could be less, could be that, I don't know.
But that's, okay. Where utilities are always,
On-site water
Yeah.
treatment, it's just a bigger leach field, and if you're building a $2 million home, a bigger leach field
Yeah.
is not.
okay. okay.
It's fair, but I mean, I'm tired of having an argument with people in Apple Valley, because that's the only quiver in their. Or the only arrow in their quiver is septic, and I'm like, that's a tired argument. It's a piece of ground, and there's so much ground in these 5
No,
acre
see,
properties.
see, that's what it's like.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it, sorry, I didn't mean to belittle your comment. When all of these properties in Lyons were all $200,000 to $300,000, it was a really loud argument, but now that they're all worth multiple millions of dollars, it's a lot less loud.
Okay, that's where I'm going with the whole septic thing. That's why I asked it at that board of trustees meeting. I was like, okay.
Also, there's several
Yeah.
properties in Apple Valley that don't even have any septic. They don't have any on-site water treatment whatsoever. They're just old. They
Oh,
have like a pit in the ground, which is a
Really?
nuisance.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's a.
Well, that's just, I think Boulder might like, well, I guess they would just continue as septic. I mean, that's where I'm going with this. County of Boulder might want
I mean, we could
to
argue
be
if we wanted to be
something
annoying,
cleaned up. Exactly,
the
yeah.
entire way up the river, all the way to Glenwood or Pinewood Springs should be our influence area, because that influences water.
Well, I was just saying that
flowing
Boulder County might want them cleaned up, and that's where, are you?
But they're not making it.
Yeah.
Never mind. Yeah,
Okay, that's where I'm going. And that was what I've been initially,
it's a good point.
a few minutes ago when you started, that was where mine was going.
So David, do you have the responses that you need?
Yeah, no, this is great. No, it's all good. These are arguments that,
Last part on that, why not Upper CMX? Why not North CMX as part of our influence area as well?
Yeah.
Is that on the table with the Board of Trustees? Or is that-
essentially,
Okay, I'll leave it alone, but that should be on there.
Is that like up here?
It's just between Rabbit Valley and ours. So the whole road that goes up, squiggly line right above where your hand was.
here, what are you talking about?
No, all the north end of.
Oh,
Highway
Down
66.
This,
South.
Stout Flats.
It's not gonna be a hole in the ground forever.
Yeah.
No,
No,
at some
that's,
point, it's a lot of potential housing on a blighted site.
yeah, no, that's not something that, it's been brought up.
No, well, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
I'm pie in the sky sort of development hat on at the
Yeah.
moment, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah.
in
There
other
are,
Yeah,
areas,
it
right?
totally
Yeah.
happens.
It's
Boulder
common
County, so
practice.
Boulder County Parks and Open Space has staked their claim.
Yeah, well, who cares?
Go
That's
all
within
that.
our 3 mile plan.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah,
no-
open up, open.
Yeah.
Yeah, Boulder County's.
They're chomping at the bit.
David's like,
Bullying. You know, it's interesting that you made that.
Should be included.
Yeah, but Dave, when you made that comment a few ago about Boulder County being kind of open space bullying, that they're actually known region wide as kind of bullies. I mean, they do the, give them credit, they're organized and we're part of it.
Yeah, my
Sorry.
question
Yeah.
was kind of related to this. I guess I'm not understanding all of the rationale for why some places, some parcels are included and others aren't. I understand why the ones in blue are priority, but like, is it landform? Like, is it, or like open space here, like, but like, why not up there?
Why not further north?
Like, I guess that's Steamboat Mountain. I guess I'm just not clear of like, if we're simplifying things, why not just make it cleaner, like even simpler? Although I understand why, like the parcels that are the priorities right now are such.
Well, we don't have, like, you could say, as an example, this area right here, why didn't I make a polygon right there?
Wait, where are you?
Do you see where my cursor is going?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not those?
Yeah.
And the only reason why I didn't create a polygon here or just create one giant polygon, then I separated it into two, you could say,
Yeah,
is because this is literally the side, this whole thing is a mountain. And it's like,
yes, that's landform.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. So it's like, well, rural preservation, that's fine. We're not going to, like, for us to
Hmm.
put this into our municipal influence area, we don't have any interest in annexing this at all.
Okay,
Yeah, because it's like, this would be really hard to make an argument to annex any of this. Whereas these other areas, there's arguments for, at least in part. I mean, there's a mountainside here too, on this part of these
Yeah.
parcels along Stone Mountain Drive, but it's also very flat for a part of it, whereas this is not at all. There's a mountain right here, but this part is flat, so.
Is this only about annexation or is it not also about zoning?
About,
Potentially,
about our zoning or about the county zoning?
both, yeah, county
Yeah.
zoning, really.
Yeah,
Meaning, can we influence the county's thoughts on zoning if it's in our municipal influence area? That's kind of my whole
we
point.
could encourage them, if it's in our municipal influence area, or if it's within our 3 mile boundary. You know, we have the right to, you know, plan within that 3 mile zone. And that could be to the point of encouraging Boulder County to say, you know, your current zoning regimen is insufficient.
If that's a real lever we can pull, then it's
Yeah.
worth strategically drawing more blue boxes to make into our, or not, maybe not blue, but to make things more into our municipal influence area when there's structures in them. And if it's not, if it's just about annexation, then I totally agree with what you have shown already, because those are annex possibilities where we're not going to annex in, probably not going to annex in Courts Way or Apple Valley, right? We've had that discussion before, but we want to influence the way the county treats them and thinks of them, because more density would positively impact our town, then that's worth something, not us drawing colors and, but if it's not a real lever, then it's not a real
No,
lever. I
everything
don't
is a
know.
lever. We have this one opportunity where we can, you know, I don't know if strong arm's the right word, but
Yeah.
because we're still small but mighty against Boulder County, but it's this is where you can pull those levers of influence and say, because we have always still the one caveat that we can, or I shouldn't say caveat, it's a stick that we could hold above Boulder County and say, you know what, we're not going to be in the IGA. And because we don't have to, no one's forcing us to. There's no state law that requires us to be in a comprehensive land use IGA. It's only because all the jurisdictions since 1978 in Boulder County have decided that's a good way to go about it.
And they just lost SNED, which is kind of embarrassing. So the shape of the things, to answer Megan's insinuation, I think I like them being specific because I think they have intentionality behind them.
Okay.
Whereas if they're not specific shapes with intentionality behind the shapes, then it kind of looks like we're just being obnoxious, like Ward.
That's fair.
And so maybe maybe a good path forward, but in the immediate sense would be for anybody who's interested to come up with their own ideas, formal ideas, like on map, on paper, so that can be solidified into this letter.
Can we just draw something?
Yeah. Drawing is fun, especially if it's a crayon. And if you have a 64 pack, you're even better off.
No, they have bigger packs.
At least with a 64, you have a sharpener.
Yeah.
But, you know, those ideas then could be brought together into what we would probably want to have as an executive session of the PCDC, because it would be negotiation tactics. And so you wouldn't want to have that be a public meeting. So that can happen even 2 weeks from now if you wanted, but although it doesn't need to happen that fast, yeah. So anyway, that, you know, the power is, there is power to the PCDC's approach to how we go forward. Yeah.
Just one comment. I think it would be helpful to try to get as much history as we can, particularly about the eastern areas. Because there was this years past a notion that 1,000 homes are going to be built on Dial Flats or in that area. And in fact, Boulder County's influence may actually come from Lyons residents who said, no, we don't want that. Why don't you put something in there that'll mean it'll never happen? And so just, and I'm probably getting that a little overly summarized, but it might be good to just be aware of some of the history that's involved in that eastern area. And of course, CEMEX history is I think fairly well understood just by reading the CEMEX IGA.
Which is also open for possible renegotiation, even though it doesn't expire until 2034.
Yeah, but there are some things like solar farms and things like that can be talked about within the current situation, right?
There's even a possibility that if we opened up the Cemex IGA, it could be rolled into just a brand new comprehensive Lions IGA that incorporates, so there's not two separate ones.
Yeah.
Because right now we have Lions Boulder County Land Use IGA and Lions Boulder County Cemex IGA. And we could have just one.
Yeah, one of the things about the fact Lyons has had such a long history for such a small town, and the things have gotten so incredibly complicated for such a small area. And so that notion of simplifying to the degree possible, not that you don't take away intentional, specific targets, but they try to simplify the overall thing as much as possible. Avoid creating more complexity. With each time something's negotiated, it adds complexity. So David, how are you feeling now? You gotten the input you need?
I feel like $5. No, that's good. Yeah, no, I have plenty, but really there's a lot, kind of resting on the PCDC to come up with a formal approach to bring to the board of trustees. So
Would you conduct a workshop? Like organize and outline a workshop for us? Is that what we're talking about?
we could do that in executive session.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe not the next, because we already have.
Yep.
Martin Parcel zoning, the next meeting.
Yep.
And then maybe the meeting after that.
Okay, that's possible. That would be, July 10th, I think, something like that.
Sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so want to move on to
Yeah.
talk about some of the exciting things that you're involved in,
Yeah,
other than that?
so, I went on a nice bike ride with the team. Let's see. We stop sharing this.
That's cool, photo.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that is one I took from a lunchtime run probably when I ran across Commissioner Evers. So let me share.
That was I found was someone's bicycle basket.
That's the town's bike.
Oh,
Yeah,
so they can do, oh, fun, yeah.
Yeah, which is my favorite mode of getting around town. So if I have something to go to in town, I'll take that bike. Okay, share screen again. Sorry. Share screen. Syllabus. There it is. Yeah, so that's the town bike. That's parked right at the trailhead for picture. walk.
Maybe around, yeah.
That was
Gulch.
back in the fall when it was not exactly green. Let's move that over here. Okay. So here's some items that are up to bat. Martin Parcel. We took care of the first part of that one. Yep, annexation done, zoning will be next. Unless you, I will just mention it because it's a long-term item. Otherwise, I will not talk about it. Moss Rock Hotel. Okay.
Only like, is there an estimate of when they may break ground? Just because people are asking, it'd be nice to know. Best guess.
The only thing I've heard is late this year. They're obligated to do so, I think, by the end of November.
Okay,
I think is something.
but they're probably entitled to a delay or two.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Lion Valley Park, the Summit Housing project is plowing ahead. Spirit Hound Distillery, this is an interesting one. So Spirit Hound Phase 2 is right now offline. It was going to be, we were awaiting the application, but they ran into a water line issue on their phase one. So that explains all that digging that was happening in the Spirit Hounds parking lot. There was some leakage in their new water line, so they had to tear up all that.
That's not a foundation, that's the water line repair.
Yeah, the water line repairs. Yeah. So,
Oh, jeez.
yeah, big hole. So phase two will come, but, first they have to arrange this. Nothing from generator development. And that would be the, East St. Vrain planning area, former Longmont Water Treatment Plant, nothing on that. Tebow properties. So for the first time in months, you know, we had an initial meeting back in mid-February. Last week, we received an email from the Tebow property developer. And again, this is the strategic parcel on the northeast corner of US 36 and Highway 66. And the question basically was, hey, we're back thinking about this again, and we want to know more about, you know, water service, basically water and sewer service. So that's it, but at least there's something. Because there has been nothing, it's been entirely silent for 4 months. Mayama Movement Studio is still under review by the building department. This is the Boone parcel potential annexation, 314 Main Street. So, my tentative plan is for July 10th, which we just talked about, is maybe having an executive session for the IGA to have the PCDC hear the rezoning idea of an overlay district, an ADU overlay district for the 400 block, north half of the 400 block of Main, north half of the 300 block of Main, north half of the 400 block of High Street. And this stems from 314 Main Street wanting to have an accessory dwelling unit. So anticipate that probably July 10th. Projects afoot. The Broadway project will commence in August, which is exciting. There's also some exciting grant opportunities that will help to augment the Broadway project that some other town staffers are working on. So that's great. St. Vrain Corridor Trail. We received an extension from DRCOG because the trail was supposed to be under construction by June, which is now. And we have received an extension on that because they understand the issues that have come up that prevented that from happening. You know, the roadblocks we've run into with landowner negotiations, with construction costs, all those things. So we've received an extension and hopefully some good news coming our way on finances. The housing study, the IHOP Innovative Housing Opportunities Grant. This is the meeting that you're referring to, Vice Chair Evers. Bohannon Houston will be hosting a project kickoff either the week of the 12th or the 19th. So it's not happening this week, the week of the 12th, but the 19th. So next week. If anyone from the PCDC would like to be present at that, we can't have more than 2, but we can have 1 or 2 people from the PCDC represent the PCDC.
I'm interested.
Great, okay. And you don't have to decide tonight to fight over the second seat.
I'm interested, but it would depend on time.
Okay. Let's once I find out more in time, then we'll throw it back to I'll throw it back to everyone to see who might else be able to attend. Okay. Anyway, it's super exciting. Bohannon Houston understands how much the town is really waiting on this study to give us some direction, which they're excited about as a consultant, because it's not like, I think like some studies where it's just like, yeah, we got this grant. Great, can you do a study? We are really on so many fronts wanting to know what we have and what we can do. Okay. Here, okay, the intergovernmental agreement on land use with Boulder County, we talked about that enough for tonight. And including my oversight and the Brownfield Advisory Committee. This is really neat that we had our first in-person meeting, the Brownfield Advisory Committee. This is a grant-funded opportunity to study potential brownfield sites. One thing to clarify that a lot of people don't realize is brownfields don't necessarily mean the site is contaminated. It could just be a site that's blighted and needs help. And you might have curiosity. Well, why doesn't anything happen with that piece of land? Like the one that comes to my mind all the time is Vintage Auto. It's like right there, great piece of land, wonderful opportunity. Why is it just sitting there? And this grant will allow for landowners, including the town of Lyons, to examine parcels for potential contamination and potential redevelopment. There might not be any contamination, but the consultant, Stantec, will still give us ideas on how to potentially redevelop a contaminated or unsightly site. And it gives a landowner the opportunity to have the study done for free, which will probably have to be done anyway when they go to sell. So it's a win-win, and we don't have to pay anything for it. And as far as grant management goes, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, which is straight too. It's really nice. So if you think of sites, let me know. And Vice Chair Evers is also on the Brownfield Advisory Committee. So he's another person who can speak to this. We will be having the consultant in town tomorrow for an in-person meeting here to talk to town staff and to Brownfield Advisory Committee members. Sidewalk assessment RFP. Everybody knows that there's big gaps in our sidewalk system. We have money set aside for a consultant to assess our sidewalks and our connectivity and where sidewalks don't exist, where they can be improved, what the status is of sidewalks. Are they concrete? Are they sandstone? Are they broken? Are they 2 foot wide? Are they 5 foot wide? Where do we have ADA ramps? Where do we need ADA ramps? Anything you can imagine. All things sidewalk. The RFP will be issued this week.
Do they, so with that, will that part of helping to identify funds and grants to help pay for?
That's
That's
the
the big thing.
That's
People,
the big thing.
I mean, people are happy to tell you where. It's just
Yep.
for years, I keep on hearing, well, how are we gonna fund this? So, yeah.
Well, we can't fund it if we don't know what we
Yeah, exactly.
have.
Okay. Yeah.
So once we know what we have, then we'll be able to
Okay.
reach out for funding
Yeah,
opportunities.
so we know what, and then you can prioritize it and things like that. Yeah.
And this ties into the very next bullet, safe streets and roads for all. So I have to apply actually for a notification that I intend to apply. It's kind of funny. You notified that you intend to apply. And it's an application. For a US Department of Transportation grant called Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A.
Now, you know that the Fourth Avenue Bridge was funded that way.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah,
That was a pretty big
that was
award.
it was a big one.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you might want to get a kind of a feel for that, how soon they might give another big reward, you know what I'm just saying, when you've just had. it.
Well,
Yeah.
this one is so Safe Streets and Roads for All has 2 parts. The first part is a planning grant and the second part is an implementation grant.
Okay,
So the planning grant, basically, if you want to get any money from the US Department of Transportation over the next 10 years, you have to have a Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant undertaken. And right now, on the webinar I was on about a week and a half ago or so, over half the population of the US, which means a lot of big cities, have already had their planning grant taken care of by this SS4A, and that's just within the past year. So if we want to ever have a chance at an implementation grant, we need this comprehensive Safe Streets and Roads for All assessment of our community. And that looks at all forms of transportation and where our basically what our safety status is. How safe are our streets, how safe are our sidewalks, how safe are anything for any mode of transportation. And then from there, we can use that study to argue, hey, we need this grant.
So we could, for example, make recommendations about the strip of highway between the intersection of 36, 60, and 66
Yeah.
and where the bicycle lane starts on it. Yep.
Okay.
And then the other one that has gotten some discussion in the past is one-way or two-way on Main and Broadway.
That has, and you know, that's one that, you know, I have this vision of a roundabout at where the triangle is, where on the east side of downtown, where Broadway and Main come together. That being a way to be able to bifurcate traffic into two ways on Main and two ways on Broadway. You'd have to have roundabouts here too, possibly on Fifth and Broadway and Fifth and Main, but, and then people have even talked about another one, a third one on High and US 36. So who knows? There's so many different ways to dice this, but I did have Coco, you know, the artist, she was in town hall today. And she said, don't ever make Broadway two ways. Because the headlights will shine into my house. Although her house is elevated, I went and took a look afterward. Her house is here. So I don't think so, but she's worried about that. So, but both those intersections are.
By the way,
No,
in the parking study that they had done a number of years ago, they did call for 2 roundabouts. You remember, I don't know if you've read that or looked at it back.
I actually haven't.
Yeah, go and look at it. Just look at the map. You'll know what I'm talking about. So
Okay,
there's some history behind that. So on the west side, Fifth Avenue and
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we'll, I will be applying for that. And then the last bullet is the North Foothills Bikeway feasibility study with Boulder County. This is really fascinating. It is just a feasibility study, like where will this trail alignment go? But there's impetus to make this trail happen. It's not like, oh, we'll make this planning study and then it'll sit on a shelf. It's really basically this planning study will then go directly into implementation. Because CDOT has the desire, Boulder County has the desire, City of Boulder has the desire, and Lions with no money has the desire to have this connect to our St. Vrain Trail, and also the conundrum of how do you get bikes safely at, to and through the intersection of US 36 and Highway 66. So this feasibility study, which will end in, I think March of 2024 is when their report is due, will likely immediately turn into, okay, now we will fund this and build it. Yeah. So it's great. It's really exciting. So I'm on that steering committee to try to give the Lion point of view. They probably get tired of me saying, well, in Lions, here's what we feel about this. And we want most of the money to go toward our 15-mile bike study, bike trail. Okay, that's it on the list.
Okay, and any additional questions for Planner Kenneth?
just a question. Well, when the North Hills Bikeway study, well, this is probably may not be part of the bikeway, but do you know if they'll ever put like if they've talked about putting wildlife underpasses? Yeah, in the section.
That was mentioned. That was actually mentioned. I don't know if it'll happen.
Just when when you see the elk signs and just
Yeah, it was actually mentioned in the last meeting.
Okay.
Okay, unless there are additional questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We don't need to vote, we can.
All right, say this.